Well, hello everybody. So, let's talk about AutoCAD. So first, when you fire it up for the first time, you're greeted with a screen about like this. It may look a little different for you. I've got all these files that I've opened recently. So obviously, in order to work, we need to create a new part file, a drawing file. And so there's three ways to do it. You can hit the drop down here, you can hit the new button, and you can hit the new button up here. I don't want you to hit this new button right here. I know it's very aesthetically pleasing, very lovely, and it opens the part right up. But we're not going to be using these standard templates that come with AutoCAD. There is a video, and you've likely already set up your templates and seen them by now, but you will be using the templates from that video. And so, like, I could hit the drop down here, navigate to them, or it may show it here, and I can click it. Like, I could choose Imperial A, for instance, and it would set it up. But the best course is to usually just hit this new button up here. You can also hit Q new, as it says right there below my mouse. You can kind of see it. When you hover over stuff, it'll always tell you the command to make it work. So I'm just going to click the new button. And then we're prompted with that opportunity to choose what we want, which is our GNTC templates. And note, these templates may look different for you because I tend to reuse videos from semester to semester. And so they have likely changed since you've seen this video. Okay, so once you've got it open, I'm going to delete all of this just so I can show you some general concepts to get you going. So, first of all, AutoCAD is really cool in that it has a command line and it likes to keep you honest. It tells you what's going on. So like right now, it says type a command. If I were to just choose a random tool up here, maybe line, it would say line, specify first point. And if I chose a point, it would be like line, specify next point, and so on. And essentially, it continually keeps a transaction history, if you will. That's why it's command line. It's showing all of your commands and your command prompts. Now, it's a little advanced, just kind of giving you some concepts there. There's in the textbook you're using a breakdown of all of the UI elements, but there's a main few that I want to mention for the sake of getting started. You have your model space. This is where you're drawing and stuff, and then you have a layout space. The layout space will be where you make your PDFs of the assignments, and I do require a PDF submission so that I can provide feedback whenever it comes to grading, because otherwise I can't really. I could open your file and email it to you, but that would be a lot of work. It wouldn't be well recorded for the sake of state regulations. So the best solution is to have PDFs and to mark them up. And so you'll make them through your layout tab. There'll be a video on that too, of course, no worries. And then, one of the biggest things that people tend to neglect when they start, but they shouldn't, is this little area. And I'd be lying if I could tell you the name of it off the top of my head, but this is where you control how your inputs work. Like you saw whenever I did the line before, I could just move my mouse all freely around. But if I were to change some of these inputs, like putting on ortho mode, now when I move freely around, you can kind of see that the line only goes horizontally or vertically. Okay. And so there's a lot of power in these inputs, but the main ones to focus on, I'm going to hit escape to turn this command off. The main one to focus on really at first will be these four. I believe that it makes you do a little bit of grid work, but the grid, can be turned on and off visibly right there. You can right click it, change the settings accordingly to what you need. Maybe want to change the size of the grid or something like that. You could change it here in the snap and the actual grid visibility. I can turn on the grid snap mode, so whenever I'm moving, you can kind of see it's like a well, I don't know what you call them. There's some kind of machine I remember like at Lake Winnie back in the day, where you would drop the ball and it would plink down and it just like bounce back and forth as it goes. And so you can kind of tell it easily snaps. So I could pretty rapidly draw something like a square because it's snapping at each point on that grid. And so it's actually not. When you get good with AutoCAD, you're pretty much never going to use the grid or the grid snap. But in your introductory area, you'll be using them there, and you can just turn them on and off by clicking the buttons. And so as you can tell, when something is selected as in enabled, it'll be blue, and when it's off, it will be black. So, as you can see, no grid, click the button, grid on. So the next set of options here is ortho or polar. And so technically you can have neither on, and when you draw a line, it just lets you do whatever. But you really should always have one of these two enabled. And so polar, it allows you to do any degree increment. But what happens is if I were to right click polar, maybe choose a set of angles. That's what we're doing here is angle designation. I could choose 45, 90, 135, and 180 because those are numbers we're familiar with. And when I move my mouse to 0, you can see it shows this long green projection line that's like infinitely long. And that says we're exactly at 0. And so if I move up until I hit 45, you're going to see the same effect. When I hit 45, it does that green dot. So what AutoCAD doesn't tell you, why does this matter, right? So what it doesn't tell you is if you were to draw a random line, doing an angle, if I did that, you see it says 19. And if I were to dimension between them, and you don't have to know how to do this, I'm just showing the reason why this matters, it looks like 19. But if I actually increase the precision, it's not even close. You see that? It's almost a ½ inch from 19. And so that is exactly why we do polar snap. So if you wanted to have a 19-degree increment, you would need to either choose a preset or go to tracking settings and change it. I can make it 1-degree increment, and then it's always going to snap at a perfect angle. For instance, you can always see that green. So that's a bit much. Usually I like to do, like whatever we need. If we needed a 30-degree angle, I could just do it and get it on the spot. It snaps, you're good to go. That's traditionally how it works. It's one of those things that as long as you're making sure it's snapping, you should be good. And that's the whole concept of drafting, it's computer aided design. So what it's saying is like, here's your aid right here, make it exact. And so aside from polar, we have the option of ortho. And so this is great when you want to rapidly draw something like a box, like you could just draw a line. I could just click wherever, I could draw another line, and then I'll explain that concept in a minute, but I could do some tracking here. Not sure why it's not snapping. That's okay. So then I could close it out and it would be crooked, but so generally speaking, you just use the right tool for the job. But when you're actually starting out, you're probably going to have a more intricate shape and it's going to have dimensions. So how do you do that accurately? Well, you only need a few commands to create just about anything. So you click to place a line right after you've enabled it. And if you're not sure if it's enabled, you can just click it, look down here, and it should say line specify first point. So I click to make a point, or maybe it tells me where to have it. And if that's the case, instead of like clicking, if you notice to the right of my mouse right now, over this area, it's giving me an option to enter coordinates. So like say I wanted it to be at 0, 0, which is where this XY is. I could type in 0, 0 and hit enter. And so now it starts there. Okay, so there's two ways to begin something. It's essentially either click or give coordinate. Then, if you notice right here, it's kind of showing like a little dimension thing in the bottom left here below my mouse. And so that's giving us the option to set how long a line is. So I could do like, this line is 4, enter. And then I could move my mouse again to specify the direction because it can go anywhere. You just have to give it a length. And I could say 4, enter. I could do up, 2, enter. And essentially that's how it works. And you can pair that together with angles if you wanted to set, a snap to, say, in this case, 30 degrees, and I could type in 6. And so just knowing that, you can make most shapes at the start. Obviously, you'll use line to build pretty much anything besides a round. And for rounds, you have circles. It's very similar. You just read the prompt. So it says specify the center. I would click to place a center. And then I could either click to place a size or I could type in a value of like 2, something like that. And the cool part is if you hover over any of these, you see how it says, for this one, it shows a picture, first of all, very helpful. But then it says press F1 for more help. You can always do that and it'll pop out a website showing GIFs of how to do these. And it'll explain how they work. Very useful. So any of these you're not sure how they work and you're trying to figure it out and you can't, well, go to the Autodesk Knowledge Network. It's going to have all the answers for you, basically. And so just knowing those, you're pretty much off to the races. The only other things I would say is like object snap is very important down here. And so always make sure it's enabled. And so what that does, if I were to draw a line, okay, and I wanted to draw starting at that endpoint, well, you see how it's showing that square? That is object snap. What it's saying is like, this is going to be exactly at that endpoint, and so I could draw it just fine. But if I turned off object snap, when I hover, there's nothing. So like, I'm going to zoom in really, really far and try to hit it right, and it just doesn't do it. So I could watch this. I'm going to be as exact as I can be right here, okay? But if I zoom in, it's not even close, because that's the whole point, is it can be infinitely large or infinitely small because it's digital. So in order to ensure accuracy, you have to have snap on. And so I'm going to type in Z, enter, A, enter to zoom all, because I've kind of zoomed in too far. You can always do that too if you get stuck. But you can turn it on, and you can also choose what you can snap to by right-clicking on the icon. And so, you know, if I have midpoint on, quadrant, intersection, tangent, honestly, these are the ones that I would suggest just having on by default. If you have any of those other ones on, I would uncheck them. But it allows you a lot of input. So if I had a circle, you know, I could draw, I can hover over the outside and I can choose a center point. I could choose a quadrant, or if I had like a line going to it, I could choose a tangent. You see a little tangent icon? And so boom, with a tangent, you have that seamless transition from one shape to the other. I could choose to do a midpoint, endpoint, and if you notice, it actually does specify there what kind of selection it is if you hover for a minute. And so really just knowing those basic concepts is enough to kind of get you through most. I always suggest, and I'll have more in a later video, but I always suggest trying to get comfortable with the modify panel pretty quick. But it's kind of like anything else where, like, in the program, if you start on the left and you kind of work your way to the right, that's the importance of everything. So like, you're going to draw a lot using the draw panel on the home tab. Then you're going to use a lot of modify on the, you know, modify tools on the modify panel. Then you're going to have some dimensioning in the annotation stuff. Maybe you do some layers. And as you branch to the right, it becomes more meaningless, you know. And then you may get to a different tab that's based on something else. Like I use annotate a lot because it's got all of the dimension stuff plus a little bit more all in this one area. And so for now, I would just say worry about the home tab and getting familiar with the stuff on the left up to about right here, you know. I'm not going to throw a lot at you as far as requirements go at first, but it's good to get a little bit of familiarity as you grow. So that's pretty much it. If anybody has, oh, you know what? Actually, sorry, I was about to sign out here, but I thought about something. So another thing I want to mention, if I was talking about it a second ago, but like if I were to go and draw over here, you need to have, where is it at? Object snap tracking. This guy is important too. So like, if it's not enabled, you're going to have a lot of problems with creating shapes without typing in values. So what I'm going to do to show how it works is like you saw before, if we had polar on, you know, it did that green line to make a exact length there. Well, this works similarly, but it's allowing you to align things to other things. So if I were to draw a line and I want it to be exactly where this one is, but down here, you can make it so by doing this. You notice it's got these green lines right here. And so the way it works is somewhat similar to drawing a traditional line. You move your mouse out in the direction you want it. You hover over the point you're looking to align it to, and then you move your mouse down from it, and you get this little lovely white X. And that says basically, and you get the green dots. And that says to you, this is aligned. And so then I could click it, and I could just hit the endpoint to close it. Right click, enter. And yeah, so make sure object snap tracking is pretty much always on. There's not a bad case for it. So by default, you've got these. And if you hover, you can see the hotkeys for these. So like the only ones I'm very familiar with is F8 and F10. Very useful to know. So you don't have to, like, you know, go down here and click it every time, choose which one. You can just type them as you're going. Another useful thing, and this will be the last thing, is using escape, delete, and space on your keyboard. So, you know, if I'm in the middle of a line and I'm like, oh, I messed up, you know, I can hit escape to disable it. I usually hit it twice to be safe. I want to see that command cancel, you know, because sometimes it takes a few. So you can hit escape, you know, clear it out. Say I drew a line and I'm like, I need to draw another line. Well, because the last thing I did was draw a line, I can hit space to repeat my last command, and I could draw a line. So if you get good at it, you can be like escape space, stuff like that. Very useful. And then naturally to delete, you can just, a lot of people do this and I'm not sure why, but you could just click on it and click delete or erase. You could right click it, hit erase. But in my opinion, the easiest thing is just select it, hit delete on the keyboard, and call it a day. And so the real actual final thing I want to mention is how to select stuff. You can click a line, you can click another line, you can click another line, or you can hold control and then click it to deselect. Wait, is it shift? Yeah, you can hold shift and click it to deselect it. So I can, just click it regular. I can shift click to deselect, or you can do box selections or lasso selections. And what that is like if you move your mouse and you click and then you move your mouse down, it makes this box. And what this does is it allows you to click stuff. So I could just do, it goes from either direction. There's kind of like a rule of thumb. You've got the green for one direction, which is select everything in order to actually select it, or you've got the blue, which is the other way, and it allows you to select things based only on what is completely selected. So like as you can kind of tell there, like this guy, it only highlights this line because I'm not selecting the entire horizontal line, so it just gets this one. And if you do from the bottom right, it's just anything it crosses. So it's a pretty easy thing to like click and then click again, delete, or lasso selection. And the way it works is you hold down after clicking. So I'm going to click and keep holding my mouse down, and I can just draw a shape of what I want to be selected. So if I had like a maybe a line right here, I could click, I could hold, and I could just draw essentially a boundary around what I want, which is everything except for that line. And then let go, and it selects it. So you've got multiple options. You could just draw a quick circle. You can do the box select, or you can just manually click depending on your application. And that's pretty much it. If you do happen to get too messed up as far as your position goes with your drawing and where you're at, just do a zoom, enter, A, enter. And that's in case you're not reading down here at the bottom. Z, enter, A, enter. And so what that'll do is zoom out back to your main view where you can see everything. Because sometimes people, when they're getting familiar, they may scroll too far in or out. So just good to know. And with that, if anybody has any questions at all, just let me know.